Okay, the healthiest diet in the world, number 2, is what I call the real paleo diet. Now, I mentioned earlier that I got a bit of a pet peeve with the modern popular paleo diet, and I'm going to explain to you why, and just give me a minute. So I grew up in a hunting lodge in the mountains of British Columbia. I have a First Nations or Native American grandmother, and my grandfather actually lived with the Dene people, the Athabascan people, from 1902 to 1934, and actually lived as a trapper and a hunter, which is why I grew up in a hunting lodge. Anyway, since I grew up that way, as soon as I got out of high school, one of my first jobs was teaching wilderness self-reliance, bushcraft and stuff like that. And I've been doing that off and on for about 25 years. I've also got the opportunity to work with some of the best primitive skills teachers in the world. In fact, I shared a school with a man named Chris Morosky, who I think is the top primitive skills teacher in North America. So I'm not saying that to brag and sound all, whatever, but I'm just offering you that perspective. As I grew up around Paleolithic people, I've spent a lot of time in the bush, basically living like a Paleolithic person. And the reason why that's relevant to the paleo diet is no self-respecting indigenous paleo person raised by their grandparents would cook their meat over the fire on a stick very often, or if at all. Right now, especially you don't have metal, so you can't have a metal spit to roast your roast or whatever like that. You don't have a grate to barbecue anything because there's no metal grates, and you sure don't have a metal frying pan to sear your steak. And that's my only pet peeve with the paleo diet. Otherwise, it's awesome. Every time I pick up a paleo diet cookbook, it's grilled everybody: grilled salmon, grilled fish, grilled deer, grilled anything. It's actually one of the worst ways to cook your meat. Right? It ruins the fat, it tightens the proteins, and it includes what are called advanced glycation end products, right? And those things actually cause inflammation in your gut, they cause inflammation in your vascular system, your brain, and have been linked to Alzheimer's. So you don't want to do that. And again, if you just think about the Paleolithic experience, you wouldn't rip your animals apart and then cook their meat over a stick on the fire. You do everything you can to rescue every possible aspect of that animal for food. I've lived it, I've taught it. I just want you to take a moment, have a sense of humor and go, yeah, right. So maybe all these paleo diet books, they have a really good idea, lots of protein, lots of plants, lots of healthy fat. But for me, it's the cooking method. It's kind of a little bit wrong. Also, Paleolithic people, and again, from a wilderness survival teacher's perspective, you're a scavenger. You're not going to miss out on anything. So although I agree that eating grains is a really bad idea for a lot of people, especially with autoimmune disease, the actual paleo diet included everything from bugs to tree bark to anything else you could get your hands on. The thing is that most Paleolithic tribal people, they knew how to treat those plant embryos, the seeds, the nuts, the grains, and the beans to make them less harmful. Typically, they'd be soaked in lye. In fact, my grandmother's people, a couple of generations ago, they'd be chewing up the tree nuts and then spitting them out, burying them wrapped up in leaves for about 3 weeks. They'd pull it out of the ground, scrape off the mold, and slice it up, dry it in the sun, and then you could feed it to the younger people and the older people, and no one would get sick. So even Paleolithic people had figured out these kind of basic food technologies. So let's look a little bit more at the real paleo diet. So when I talk to people about the paleo diet, or what I teasingly like to call the real paleo diet, it's primarily a diet focused on plants. About 70% of your diet in the summer is going to be plants, maybe even more, and then whatever you could store for winter you'd still be eating. So that's basically plants or veggies, roots, and fruit. So veggies is basically anything you can find that grows on top of the ground, roots, anything under the ground, and fruit would be obviously anything you can find around, but it's always going to be seasonal and local. And that's pretty important for everybody, no matter where you are in the world. So basically, if you think about it, when you're in the grocery store, if you're going to be eating primarily plants, protein, and fat, you just go into the grocery store, get your cart, and stick to the wall, and get all those good things, and then get out of there before you end up getting lured into the aisles with all that packaging, and they convince you to buy something you really probably don't want to eat. So in terms of protein, always keep a better ratio of fish to fowl, and fowl would be like chicken and turkeys. You always want to have at least as much fish in your diet as you do have birds. Too many birds in your diet, too much of a certain omega-6 fatty acid in your diet causes inflammation. So chickens are great, turkeys are great, but always balance it out with some fish. Red meat, nowadays, it's got to be grass-fed, preferably organic. I could do a video just on how bad industrial-raised meat is, and I probably will. And I'm sure you've heard it all before, but grass-fed, organic, really healthy. But again, with the protein, the really important thing is you want to cook it properly. And nowadays, that would be braising it in your oven, roasting it in your oven, or cooking it on your stovetop in what's called a floating saute, which is basically cooking it in a marinade. Now, I know that's not very popular in the sense of the foodie crowd, but until you've tried it, you have no idea what a traditional, really good stir-fry tastes like in the sense of flavor and texture and actually the healthy benefit of the meat. And fat, lots and lots of fat. Now, back in what we call a paleo time, that's mostly going to be sourced in things like animals. Some seeds, some nuts, but the fat in the seeds and nuts hasn't been conveniently squished out by a 15-ton press for you to pour out of a bottle. You just have to be able to eat the nuts. So if you're going to eat your nuts and seeds as a source of fat and protein, again, you have to treat them as a hostile food. I'm going to do a video just on how hostile plant embryos, seeds, nuts, grains, and beans really are, unless you treat them first. Now, I'm not asking you to consider soaking your food in lye. I don't even think most people know how to make lye anymore. But you could soak it in vinegar and water. You could soak it in lemon juice and water. You know, a little pinch of salt in there. You go online, how to soak nuts, how to soak seeds, things like that. You can buy the book, Returning to an Ancestral Diet, and I explain all the reasons why and how to do that. But that's what I would consider the basic paleo diet. Lots of plants, lots of protein, lots of fat. Just don't fry your meat. It's really, really a bad idea. Once in a while, why not? It's a celebration. It's fun. And that's Dr. Mike's healthiest diet on earth. Number 2, the real paleo diet. Hope you're having as much fun as me. Okay, so the third healthiest diet on earth, according to me, is what I call the healthy homesteader diet. So we've been, scavengers through ice ages. We've been, hunter-gatherers, and we've done really well for that. But now we've learned to kind of grow food, store food, and things have changed a lot. Maybe we've learned something about animal husbandry. We've got goats and chickens and cows and pigs and all that kind of stuff. So now our diet's really, really big. We have all kinds of stuff, and it's very, very consistent. We're never really starving, and almost everything's really good for us. Now, the thing that starts to change around the healthy homesteader diet is this is when we start to introduce grains. For a lot of people, say from a European background, that would be oats and barley and things like that. The thing that the healthy homesteaders always figured out what to do was, again, to soak their grains or to ferment them or to lacto-ferment them in something like yogurt until they start to basically expand or get little bubbles in there. And you can learn all about that in my cookbook as well if you want, but all homesteaders knew that you had to balance out things like oatmeal and porridge and barley and stuff like that with that kind of fermentation process, or with what are called lacto-fermented vegetables like kimchi and sauerkraut and the old version of pickling and stuff like that. So a healthy homesteader diet is everything that you could find in the Ice Age diet, everything you could find in the real paleo diet, and maybe some dairy, some cheese, some yogurt, some sour cream, maybe some sauerkraut, some kimchi, and make yourself. If you're going to eat any kind of grains, again, you have to soak them and break them down, ferment them, sprout them, and all that good stuff. And this brings up, I think, a really important thing. And this is going to sound a little bit maybe abrupt, but Chinese people, Asian people, they're not stupid for eating white rice. Since the 60s, we've had this idea whole grains are the bomb or whatever, and that's all we should eat. And we've watched obesity and autoimmune disease and cancer and all these things just spike, just off the map. Chinese people thousands of years ago, I'm a Chinese doctor, I spent lots of time with a lot of Chinese people, they knew a few thousand years ago that brown rice caused disease, especially in really young people and really old people. So they went through all the effort to bash off all that protein and B vitamins and basically feed it to their pigs or something because they knew they couldn't digest it. And in fact, brown rice is probably the most likely cause of stomach cancer in a lot of people who eat it too often. I know that flies in the face of a lot of ideas around macrobiotics and this and that, but if we're going to borrow Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and Tai Chi and Kung Fu and all these other things, Tantra, Buddhism, that we borrow from Asia, and then we can sit back, cross our arm and say, these people must be dumb to eat white rice. I think we need to sit back and look at a certain hypocrisy about respect and understanding, because these people figured it out. They're not that stupid. No one's that stupid, right? Anyway, another thing that I think is important to say about people from Asia is their pancreas is about 50% larger than everybody else on the planet because they've been basically living on more grains for a few thousand years. So if you're from Northern Europe, you've maybe got some, First Nations background or something like that, the last thing you want to do is pretend that you actually came from India or China with respect to your diet. So healthy homesteader diet, everything you can eat, lots of yummy stuff, but you got to balance out the new foods in your diet as a homesteader with lacto-fermentation, sprouting, soaking, and things like that. But I've been doing this primarily as a clinician for about 18 years, focusing on autoimmune disease, and many people, about 85% of people, get better if they start with a few days to a week of the Ice Age diet, a few months of that real paleo diet, and then gradually introduce the new things from the healthy homesteader diet. Now, I'm going to throw this out there because I get this a lot. Dr. Mike, you don't really look like a fitness model. You got sort of puffy eyes and other stuff like that. Well, I'm actually also a patient. I'm a survivor of Crohn's disease, colitis, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. Almost 20 years ago, I was in the hospital dying of these diseases. I was down to 112 pounds. So when people ask me, so, you don't look like you're perfectly healthy, I'm going, yeah, but I'm not dead. And I was pretty close for a while there. So as long as I maintain a really good frequency of some time on my Ice Age diet, some time on my paleo diet, and then some time on the homesteader diet, I get to be in really good shape. I get to have a really great life, and it's way better than the prognosis I had when I was in the hospital, which is you're going to be sick, weak, tired, and in pain the rest of your life. So I just like to throw it out there for people, because sometimes people say, well, for a doctor you should be in perfect health. I'm actually in great health considering what my health was supposed to be. So hopefully that's inspiring to you. And again, I'm throwing out this video right now in a bit of a hurry because we've got this Kickstarter campaign to try and launch my book, Returning to an Ancestral Diet. Please check out the link below and see if you're interested in supporting that. Otherwise, please subscribe to this channel. I'm going to keep putting up lots of really informative videos to support people with their health and share lots of interesting information. So, as I like to say, cook well, eat well, and be well, and thanks for watching this video. Have a great day.